Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, Naaseh v'Natzliach. I welcome you to another session of our Igeret HaTeshuva, learning from Baal Tanya. Baruch Hashem, we are up to Perek Hey, as we continue our learning of the book Betzur Yarom, which has the commentary of Rav Yora Michael Abrigel, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and also the Sidna Da'ara, which is the additional commentary by Rav Israel Abrigel Shlita, as we continue our learning of Igeret HaTeshuva with the Teshuvah del Tata. Just a quick recap before we get started. We'll just give some honorable mentions and dedication. B'ezrat Hashem, that tonight's class will be dedicated to Yehudit Ben Shabbat and family. Sheshem Barech Ota v'Sameach Ota. B'ezrat Hashem Yeh Bracha, Tzlacha, Siyata Deshmaya, health, wealth, strength, all the Siyata Deshmaya to be Matzlicha בכל מעשה ידייך, בגידול ילדים, ובזיווג הגון, מישור נשמתך, ובעזרת השם שפע, 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 והצלחה בכל העניינים. Also, this class will be to the ברכה והצלחה and פרייה ורבייה, במהרה, 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 to נתנאל יוסף בן לאה הקדוש, ואשתו קלי. Okay. In the previous chapters, or let's just do a quick catch up from, we can't go all the way back to the beginning, but we can go back to Perek Dalet, where Baal Tanya got really deep into the deconstruction of God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and its entire connection to the way man was created, specifically a Jew, of Ha Vayipach Nefesh Chaim Be'apo, that Kadosh Baruch Hu blew air into the human being, into life. And from there we said we have a nefesh elokit inside of us, and the whole comparison between angels and Jews, or the rest of the world, and everything that was created with the Hebrew alphabet, and everything was external as opposed to what's internal, the pnimiut. And just as we got to understanding how things were developing between the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, with the Yud and with Chokhmah and Binah, and developing it, and as the Rav was taking us to the Yud, which was just the dot, which was the Chokhmah, and then the Binah, which is the Hey, which opens it up, and then the Vav that draws it back to us, and then the final Hey, which the Baal Tanya revealed to us. There's a Hey above and a Hey below. And when we do an Avera, you are Avar Hey, you're distancing that Hey from Yud-Kei Vav-Kei's name, you're distancing the Hey, and revealed to us that it was that upper Hey that we're distancing, and when we do Teshuvah, Teshuv Hey, it brings us back. And Perek Hey continues on the same path of discussing the person's neshama, and he gives us a quick preview, a quick catch-up before we jump into the actual text. And B'ezrat Hashem B'neder will be able to finish Perek Hey today as well. So the next class will be Perek Vav. So in the previous learning, we learned about the soul of a Jew, that its essence comes from a place that's very, very high in the heavens. As the Pasuk in Iyov says, Chelek Eloha Mima'al, meaning that this part of our soul that comes from the high heavens. It's a godly soul, and we just want to give a disclaimer again. Same thing that we said in the previous class. It's not as if God is inside of us. Chatz v'shalom. We don't have pieces of Hashem inside of us. Kadosh Baruch Hu is not lacking more. Or it doesn't have more or less with us being in existence or not. What we're saying is that when Kadosh Baruch Hu, quote unquote, blew the air into us, so the air was inside, and it came inside of us, so it's as if it was a transfer of something that was in Hashem into us, and that's why it's called Chelek Eloka Mimal. Even though the Baal Tanya uses the wording that it's mamash, a part of God. וכמו שכתב רבנו אור החיים הקדוש in ויקרא, even he cites over here אור החיים הקדוש, שנשמותיהם של בני ישראל חצובות מאורו יתברך ממש. That the souls of the Jewish people are carved out from God's light mamash, meaning not as if, mamash he's saying. כלומר, המושג היהודי אינו מתייחס לגוף גשמי המורכב מבשר ודם בלבד. Meaning, when it comes to the word Yehudi, a Jew, don't look at a Jew as if just a combination of flesh and bones and blood. Ela chelek eloki hashore betocho. There's a part of him that is godly and resides within him fully. As it says in Baba Metzia on the 114th page on the second side, V'aten tzoni, tzon mar'iti adam atem. It says over there in the Yechezkel that Aten tzoni, you're my flock, tzon mar'iti, the one that I shepherd, adem atam. And it calls us, it gives us the title of Adam. Adam mamash. What is this Adam? So it says over here that ve'en umot ha'olam kurin Adam. It says the rest of the nations are not considered Adam. So when we say Adam, it pertains only to a Jew. The rest of the world, they don't have a chelik of this Adam. Why? Because only the Jews have the resemblance of Hashem Yitbarach. Shirak Am Yisrael domim l'Hashem Yitbarach. As it says by way of Sod, Ki b'tzelem Elokim asa et ha'adam. That in the image of God, Adam was made, and Adam is only corresponds to the Jewish people, but not to the Gentiles. The Adam begematria 45. Furthermore, Adam, the numerical value of the word Adam is 45, which is the equivalent of Havaya b'milui alfin. That if you take the word, God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, you spell it out with alfin, meaning Hey Aleph, Vav Aleph Vav, Yud Vav Dalet, and Hey Aleph, meaning that you add alpin, you add the Aleph, you get 45. And furthermore, on that 45, something that is very interesting, we know that Adam is also a combination of two words, Aleph and Dam. If you take the Aleph, that corresponds to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Alufo Shel Olam, Aleph, Vav, Yud, and Yud. 26, that's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Dam is blood, and that is the part that the mother and the father give. We said that the mother and the father give the flesh and the bones, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives the soul. How do we see this in the word Adam? Very easily, even to match 45. M. How do you say mother in Hebrew? M. That's Aleph Mem. That's numerical value 41. Then you have the word father, which is Av. Numerical value 3. So 41 plus 3 is 44. Then you add the Aleph of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's 45. That is Gematria Adam. So you have M, Av, and the Aleph of Alufo Shel Olam is Adam. Right there you can see that it's all connected as well. Now, the main part of the creation of man, of Adam, is the part that is the spiritual side for him, the neshama, the chelek ruchani. Even though he has a physical side to him and a spiritual side, the most important one is the spiritual. The physical side of man is just called the kli. Kli is the vessel. That is the one that is able to hold the neshama in a physical world, in a physical form. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what does he ask from us? He asks, Liot eved ne'eman l'neshama kedosha she'ikar adam. Hashem asks the body to be a good servant, an honest servant, a faithful servant, a loyal servant to the soul that is deposited within her, which is the main part of the man. The main part of the person is the neshama that's inside. So there's a partnership over here. There's a combination. When it comes to a human being, there's a spiritual and the physical. The spiritual is the most important. And the kli, the vessel that Hashem put the neshama to put in, is the body. And it's supposed to serve the soul loyally. However, it says that this entire world is actually like a pathway to the upper worlds. As it says in Masechet Avot, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Ha'olam hazeh domeh leprosdor b'fnei olam haba. We're just a pass-through to the next world. This whole world is just like a hallway before going to the big hall. That's why it's very important for a person to have a tremendous amount of respect for his neshama throughout his entire life. and that it gives the soul the wheel to drive the life, to take control. That she should be ruling the body, and not that the body rules the soul. Meaning we're here for a very short period of time. Most of the time we're in a spiritual realm. Most of the time we're in a spiritual reality. Now that we are in a physical reality for a short period of time, make sure during that short period of time that you're driving, that the neshama is driving the bus. The neshama is in control of the body. Not that the body is in control of the neshama. Furthermore, a Jew's neshama shel Yehudi, comes from the inner side of the Elokut, the Pnimiyut HaElokut, comes from the inner part of God. Shehi Shem Havaya, that we said in our previous lessons, what Baal HaTanya was sharing with us, that the soul stems from the place that is the internal side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is not like all the other creations in the world that come from the word Elokim, meaning Hashem created the world. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, right? Elokim. That means when Hashem created the world, He created it with speech, with the external side of Him, with the Hebrew alphabet, with God's name of Elokim. The Jews were created out of God's name Yud Kei Vav Kei, and that's from the internal, that's from the inside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we see that we're made from two different places. And because we're made from two different places, we can see there's a higher level of importance to the Jewish neshama. Furthermore, it says that all the creations came from the God's name Elokim, as we just said before, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. That's everything else except for us. And that's from the external side of God. Aval haneshama yehudit ba me'aetzem kudesh habarich hu v'oraita v'Yisrael chadu. He says, but the Jewish soul comes from the essence, from the law in this world, that the Jewish soul stems from a trifecta, from a place where three things are interconnected. The Jewish neshama comes from a place that is Kudesh HaBerichu, Oraita, ve'Yisrael Chadhu. Meaning there's three things that connect our neshama. Our neshama is connected to God, and it's connected to the Torah. The three of them are together, and on this triple connection, it is said, Ve'achut HaMeshulash lo bimhera yinatek, from Kohelet, that this three twines that are together are not going to easily get disconnected. Meaning if you ever take a rope or a string, one string, it's easy to disconnect. You take two strings, it becomes a little bit stronger. Three, it becomes more difficult. So, Kudesh HaBerichu, Oraita, v'Yisrael, the three of us, it's very hard to disconnect. It's very hard to rip those three apart. So that's where we come from. Our neshama comes from the essence that the Torah is connected to us and Kudesh HaBerichu is connected to us. That's why when you see the simplest Jew in the world, he's on a higher level than the most elevated goy in the world. Meaning, even if you see whoever today people put on a pedestal and they put him, wow, look at this guy. Look at his money, look at his brains, look at his finances, look at maybe he can even be a king of a country. Whatever his status is in the goyish world doesn't even compare to the lowest Jew in the world. Because the lowest level Jew in the world, his neshama still comes from a place that is what? Kudesh HaBerichu Oraita v'Yisrael. I mean, this is it's a different level. You can't even compare. It's either you're part of that club or you're not. In order for us to understand this a little bit better, the Rav Yora Michael Aberjez Zecher Tzadik Livracha gave a great example. He says, let's make a big comparison. Let's say you have a rock the size of this building. A huge rock the size of this building. A mega, a billion-ton rock. I don't know if there is such a thing as a billion tons, right? But a big rock. Compared to a diamond. A small little diamond. What's worth more? A rock or a diamond? obviously a diamond. He says similarly, he says even the big rock is big and heavy, but its value will never come close to the value of a diamond. Because even though this is a rock and this is a rock, but they have two different values. And you can't compare them. Furthermore, the Baal Tanya continues to say that the soul of a Jew is holy, and it got drawn down into this world in order to find its apparel, its clothing, its host, which is the human body. And the way that the neshama came into the body is al yedei koach hadibur. How did the neshama from the high heavens get to go into its vessel, which is the body? Through speech. B'ma'amaro shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu na'aseh adam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu said na'aseh adam, what happened? Mipnimiyut hadibur. From the inside, from the internal side of God's speech, man was created. And that is the main difference, as opposed to everything else in creation was created from the external side of speech, which used the name of Elohim and the Hebrew alphabet, where man, Adam, the Jew, was made from God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and from the internal side of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that is why the Pasuk says, Vayipach ba'apiv nishmat chayim, that he blew into him life. And furthermore continues to say, Man de nafach midele nafach. The one that blows in, from his, he blows in. Where's he blowing the air from? It's from inside of him, from his internals. So, and we see this also. I mean, just to crystallize this point. If I take a balloon and I blow air into the balloon, what's inside the balloon? My air, right? So it's the same thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew life into the Adam. What's inside of there? Hashem's breath, let's say air. So after the body receives the deposit of the neshama, then he's considered Adam. And an Adam, a human being, needs to have an external side to him and an internal side to him. Something that is exterior and interior. What is the exterior of a human being? That's his body. What's the interior of the human being? That's his soul. And that it just catches us up to what the Baal Tanya was discussing in the previous chapter about God blowing life into the human body, and here it's becoming crystallized of the difference between the Jewish soul and every other creation. We now begin Perek Hey. והנה המשכת וירידת הנפש האלוקית לעולם הזה להתלבש בגוף האדם. And welcome Joey, welcome ladies. It continues to say, והנה המשכת וירידת הנפש האלוקית לעולם הזה. Now this drawing down of the soul, this godly soul into the world in order to get deposited in the human body. As it says in the Pasuk, Na'aseh Adam b'tsalmenu, let us make a man in our image. It got drawn down from the internal side of God and from its source of speech. Now, what is well, we said that everything was created with speech. So what is the difference between everything else that got created with speech as opposed to a man that got created with speech? And if everything got created with speech, why is everything else external? And we have the human being who gets the internal side of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says because every single thing got created by the 22 letters, there was a speech. But when Hashem created man, he blew air. So there was no letters used. The letters weren't used, the breath was used. Remember when we were talking about when a person speaks, where the letters come either from the throat, the back of the throat, from the lips, from the tongue. He says when God created man, he didn't go through any of those 5 areas in the mouth to create him.
Probably air contain the letters that Hashem blew from the letters, because all the word the contain the letters, probably is
But
there
there's
also.
a breath in there.
Also.
So over here, without going through those 5 sections of the mouth and the 22 letters, Ela yeshirut ma'avel pnimi. The man got created directly from the vapor, from the air of the internal side of God. Now, Baal HaTanya is going to start talking about the descent of the soul, the godly soul, from the from the upper heavens to this world, as it gets to enter the vessel that it's going to be in this world, which is the human body. Hu hevel ha'elyon ha'merumaz be'ot hei tata'a k'nizkar le'ed. Meaning, now that we are, now we're going to go through the process of how this vapor, this air that came from up above, that was hinted in the letter Hey, because we said the letter Hey is mamash like just breathing, is connected to the connection of the soul to the body. In the previous chapter we learned, so we're going back to the concept of teshuvah. Obviously we're here in Igeret HaTeshuva, so we're going to be able to, that's the subject matter. So remember, we spoke about teshuvah ila'ah and teshuvah tata'ah. Teshuvah ila'ah is the teshuvah that a person does out of ahava, out of love. And then there's teshuvah mir'ah. So we said that there are 2 types of hays. When we say teshuvah, teshuv hay. So there's a hay that comes back from yir'ah, which is the hay tata'ah, the lower one, and the hay that comes back from ahava, which is teshuvah ila'ah. So we have 2 hays, an upper one and a lower one. One is when you do teshuvah out of love, the other one is when you do it out of fear. And the main difference between these 2 teshuvot processes and the 2 hays is ha'echad sheteshuvah mir'ah hopechet et hazdonot lishgagot. We already learned this before, we'll repeat it again. Somebody who does teshuvah out of fear, what it does is it just takes all his sins and it wipes him out to 0. That if he did it bezadon, hopech lishgaga, and those are forgivable. So it's if you were in a deficit, it goes to 0. Secondly, teshuvah me'ava. What do you yield when you not hopechet hazdonot l'zchuyot? It takes the demerits and turns them into credits. So that means that if you were in a deficit, now you're in a surplus. So again, either wipe out and 0, or you take your deficit and you turn it into a surplus. That is the difference between yir'ah and ahava. Second point is shemi she'oseh teshuvah mir'ah lo oseh zeh mitoch ahavat Hashem ela mitoch ahavat atzmo. So we said the main difference also between teshuvah me'ahava and teshuvah mir'ah is, besides of what it yields as a process to wiping out the spiritual debt, but where does it stem from? Well, a person that does it out of fear, he doesn't do it because he loves God. He does it because he loves himself, because he fears for himself that maybe if he doesn't do a proper teshuvah, something will happen to him, something will happen to his family, something will happen to his finances, something will happen to his health. So because of fear, and he loves himself, he does teshuvah mir'ah. In complete contrast to somebody who does teshuvah me'ahava. Somebody who does teshuvah me'ahava, he doesn't think about himself at all, because he's willing to do anything just to please God. Even if he has to להקריב את נפשו ואת כל אשר לו למען אהבת Hashem. Even if he has to forego everything that belongs to him and give and offer and sacrifice anything that belongs to him, even himself, for the love of God. As it says, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. As it says that you're supposed to worship God, you're supposed to love God. In which ways? In 3 ways. With all your heart, with all your soul, בכל מאודך. That word מאודך, there's many explanations to it. Just in previous classes we said, me'odecha, one thing is that it's your money. You serve God with all your money. Spend money on the religion, for your clothes, for your Shabbat food, for your mitzvot, for your tefillin, for your lulav. Me'odecha, we also learned in our previous class, in the Emunah class, me'odecha, if you take the root of the word Meodecha, it's the two letters that are the root of the word is Mem Dalet, and which is the Mem Dalet is the beginning of the shorsh of the word Midah, of Midot, all the ways that Hashem deals with you. If everything is easy, Bechol Meodecha, I serve you, Hashem. If everything is difficult, that's also we serve Hashem. Bechol Meodecha, Bechol HaMidot, Midah Kasha, Midah Tova, Midah Kala, Midah Din. Any Midah that Hashem deals with us, Bechol Meodecha, any Midah, we accept God's interference in our life or guidance in our life. So those are the two main differences on the Teshuvah process. So now he goes back to the pasuk. It says, just as the pasuk says in Bereshit that he blew air into him and he became alive, and now he is a live human. What is it? Alive? What makes a person stand out from anything else in creation that God created is that we have speech. Human beings have speech. That is our power. Dibur. And in regards to what we said, and what we said, when he blows out from his own air. He says our entire essence as Jews comes from that one breath that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave in the beginning of time. All this is to make a very, very strong point. Don't cheapen your soul. Don't make your soul something cheap. Don't give up on your soul. Don't dirty your soul. Don't sin with your soul. This is something like the air that God breathed into us is one of the most dearest things in the universe, and we have it inside of us. Surely we should protect it like a diamond. Surely we should protect it like it's $1 zillion, right? Not to soil it every day, chas v'shalom, with certain things. So because of where it came from, because the source is so lofty, so high in the Shamayim, and it's inside of us, we should protect it and not dirty it. And this is why there's a pasuk that says that a part of Hashem is in His nation. He says inside the soul there are two types of level. First part of the soul, it's a part of God. And that's the internal side of the neshama. A part of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the second part of the soul, Nikret Hevel Nachalato. From this pasuk we learned that there is two parts. One is called Chelek Hashem, and the other one is called Hevel Nachalato. Chelek Hashem is the part from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the Yud Kei Vav Kei that we've been learning up until now. What is the second part? Hevel Nachalato v'chitzoniyut haneshama. It's the external side of the neshama. So here we are now. You see, as the rabbi takes us through levels. Right now, we just saw that neshama had one thing. It's one piece, one block. It's inside of us, and that's it. And it's the pnimiyut. Now he's telling us, the pnimiyut side, that's Chelek Hashem. That's the part of Hashem from Yud Kei Vav Kei. But there's another side to it. Let's get deeper. We're deeper into the makeup.
Chirping on the parts.
Deeper into the deconstruction of the soul. And now that we're deconstructing the soul, we're introducing Hevel Nachalato. What's Hevel Nachalato? Chitzoniyut HaNeshama, the external side of the neshama. So now it begins to elaborate. מה שמחזק את הצלם הפנימי הוא שבירת היסוד. ומה שמחזק את הצלם החיצון הוא זהירות בקדושת המאכלים. It says, we were created in the image of God. We are a tzelem Elokim. What strengthens this tzelem Elokim, tzelem pnimi inside of us? He says, if you want to keep the holiness of this soul inside of you, and the two elements to it, the external and the internal side to it, he says, the pnimi u'shvirat hayesod. If you want to protect the inner part of your soul, is to protect the foundation. And if you want to protect the outer side of the soul, is you have to protect yourself from eating foods that are not kosher. מי שלא פוגע במאכלות אסורות, זוכה שצלם אלוקים לא שי מעליו. He says somebody who keeps strong on eating kosher food and doesn't eat things that is forbidden, he merits that Tselem Elokim never goes away from him. The Tselem Elokim always stays upon him. And why is this important? Why is it important that a human being should have a thing called Tselem Elokim upon him at all times? So Masechet Shabbat on the 151st page on the second side says, En chaya sholetet ba'adam ad shenidme lo kebehema. An animal doesn't attack a human being unless the human being looks like an animal to him. So when you have a Tselem Elokim, you look like your spiritual aura, let's call it, gives an aura to the entire world of a person. The minute a person starts to eat non-kosher, that Tselem Elokim leaves him. And now the animals see him differently. The animals see him as an animal, not as a human being. That's why you see sometimes, excuse me for saying this, but sometimes you see there's dogs that jump on human beings and they try to, they're doing proper things with the legs, right? Or sometimes you see people are on the farm and all of a sudden the bull jumps on a person, or like, why would the animal jump on a human being in the middle of the farm? Because he doesn't have a Tselem Elokim anymore. It looks like an animal to him. So he wants to mount another animal. But the person who has a Tselem Elokim is a human being. Human being, when we look at the tier levels of creation, we know that the apex, the pinnacle of creation is Adam, the human being. And we know that animals know that as well. And they fear man, as long as he is a man. But if he does things and acts like an animal and goes down to the level of animal, then they're on the same level, so they don't fear him, so they attack him. That's why when there's animals around, you always, it's hard to put into practice if you don't have that type of emunah. But you should believe your mitzvot are protecting you. Your mitzvot are protecting you. You have a Tselem Elokim on you. And they're scared of you, you're not scared of them. Right? But there's sometimes when you see that the animals are attacking human beings, you can see that possibly their Tselem Elokim sar ma'alav. And that's what Shabbat Kuf Nun Aleph says, En chaya sholetet ba'adam asher nidme lo kebehema. Look at so an animal will not try to attack or control a human being unless it looks like an animal to him. But obviously the guy's, he's standing on two legs. Yeah, but the Tselem Elokim is gone, so he looks like a behemah to him. Continues to say, Ki hapachad v'amorah shenofeh al kol ba'alei ha'chayim mipnei ha'adam u'mechamat ha'tselem Elokim hanirah al panav. The fear that all animals have of human beings is only when he has that Tselem Elokim upon him. If that Tselem Elokim goes away from the individual, they have no fear of him. So you can see that sometimes you see people that have no fear of animals, some of the fierce animals. Like Daniel with the Begov Arayot. What is he doing there with 100 lions, right? What happens over there? He had so many lions, he's not scared. Why? He has nothing to be scared. His brit was strong. His kashrut was strong. He has no fear. He has Tselem Elokim that's protecting him. Furthermore, there's another pasuk in Devarim that says, "V'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz, ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yir'u mimeka." It says that the nations of the world will see you, that the name of God is upon you, and they will fear you. And it continues to say over here that this is the Tselem Elokim, and he has the shape of a man. She'en kol chaya yechola laziko. An animal will never attack him, never be able to hurt him. However, when the Tselem Elokim goes away from the person, because of his sins or the things that he damaged, he loses this Tzurat Adam, he loses this Tselem Elokim, and he seems like an animal to the animals. And he no longer can instill fear in animals because they don't fear him at the state that he's in. Furthermore, Pirush Kmo Chevel. What we said on the Pasuk, that Ki Chelek Hashem Amo Yaakov Chevel Nachalato, the word Chevel means rope. So here the Baal Tanya is going to say Pirush Kmo Chevel. Let's now explain the Pasuk in the context of a rope. Al derech mashal, by way of a parable, שראשו אחד קשור למעלה וקצהו למטה. Let's imagine a rope where one end is in the high heavens and the other end is in the lower worlds. So what happens if you have a rope that's over here and a rope that's down here? If you move it from the bottom, what happens? There is movement on top. כאשר מזיזים את החבל למטה, גם למעלה החבל זז. When you move the rope below, you move the rope up top. He says similarly is the same concept when it comes to the neshama. The neshama has a rope. There's a rope that connects you from here, this world, all the way to Kisei Kavod. Remember, we said it several times that there's like strings that connect us. When a person has an awakening to do teshuvah, when he has fervor and desire to learn Torah, besimcha, and he says, and all these things that have to do with the service of Hashem, that's one thing. But when the lower body doesn't have the enthusiasm, when the lower part of the neshama doesn't have the fervor, gam lemala en shum peilut, so nothing happens up above. That's why when we want things from the heavens to come down, they will never come down if there's no movement up top. How do you create movement up top? You have to create movement below. Meaning, when you get to the point that you say, hey, I want X, Y, Z. I want to be a better Jew. I want to wake up to Minyan on time. I want to learn Daf Yomi. I want to come to a Baal Tanya class. I want to do Parashat Shavua class. I want to do more tzniut. I want all these things that you want. I want my children to be grow in the way of Hashem. Oh, I want to be successful. Oh, I want to be rich. Oh, I want to be healthy. No problem. You have a long list of things. Shake the rope. Do something below. Do a mitzvah. Go learn Torah. Go do chesed. Shake the rope. Because as soon as you shake the rope below, up top, it shakes also, and there's noise. All of a sudden, oh, there's noise. There's mitzvot. The person below is starting to move on a spiritual level. What's going on? But if a person doesn't do nothing, he's just sitting on the couch watching social media, there's no noise in the shamayim. Don't expect nothing. That's the way the soul works. The soul works like a chevel. Furthermore, the Maharchu says that, and we learned this again, but it's good to repeat it, to refresh our memory, that the best part, the main part of the neshama is not below, but rather it's deposited in the high heavens, and it's connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu. That we said it's tachat kisei kavod, and only the weak, small part of the neshama exists inside of us. However, in order to understand how we get connected to the bigger version or the bigger part of our soul, which is in the high heavens, to the smaller, weaker version of our soul here below, is a rope. And this rope also serves as a conduit, as a pipeline, as a rope that delivers all our tefillot. And also it's the same rope that brings down all the Torah and all the avodat tefillah milamat lemala. This exchange, this bi-directional relationship that we have with this world and the Kisei Kavod, where we throw up, we send up Torah, we send up tefillot, we send up mitzvot, and in return, when the sachar comes, when the things are supposed to come down, it comes down through that rope as well. אבל התורה ירדה מן השמיים, ולכן לפי כוח העלת התפילות, כך כוח המשכה של התורה. It says that a great tool to activate this rope as a delivery mechanism is by strong prayers and learning Torah. And furthermore, the role of this rope is to use it as a delivery service of everything that Shadam oseh ba'olam hazeh milemata lemala. Everything that you do over here, it goes through your little rope from here all the way to the heavens. Umisham nimshoch lemata, and from the same place that you send up, they send it back down. ואחרי שאדם יסיים תפקידו בעולם הזה, הוא יזכה לחזור לאותו שורש, אותה ענף. And when you're all done, after 120 years, your neshama goes back up that rope all the way down to that Kisei Kavod, back to its original source, and it stays there. When I read this, it makes me think of when you go to the bank. You know, when you go to the bank, it has put it in the tube. You put it in the tube, right? You put it in the tube. It's like, okay, here's my tefillah. It sucks it, right? And then the teller it sends you back like $1 million back in the tube also. Here, you requested the withdrawal, and here it comes back again. Like same thing, but just imagine it in a row. And everything that we're talking about over here is when a person doesn't sin. Aval, when a person starts to sin, things become different. For example, we said when it comes to sinning, there's different levels of sinning. Now we're pros in understanding sins. Oh, you sinned? Great. Let me categorize you. Let me see which file to put you in. Was it mitzvat aseh? Was it mitzvat lo ta'aseh? Was it karet? Right? Not everything has the same teshuvah process. Not everything has the same atonement process. Everything is different. So when you do a sin, what type of sin did you do? In order for us to understand what to categorize it. We want also to see how you damage the soul, to see how you dirty the soul. Is it repairable? Is it irreparable? So it says, imagine if a guy starts to sin and he starts to do the mitzvot, the sins of what? Chametz bepesach. What do we say about chametz bepesach? What is that? Karet. Or chelev odam, eating the fats or the blood. What do we say about that? Karet. Or somebody who is not following family purity, nidah. Or God forbid, somebody who doesn't keep Shabbat properly. All that is what? Karet. He says that rope starts to get cut. Slowly but surely starts to get cut. Because that rope that we're talking about is built from many strings. How many strings? 613, right? Each mitzvah is another string. So the minute you start to transgress on one, you cut another one. So if the guy's making all these sins, what he's doing, he's cutting that rope. Now, what's the danger zone over here when somebody starts to sin? The danger zone is that when somebody starts to sin and he doesn't get zapped right away, right? He doesn't keep Shabbat, he's on the beach and nothing happens, right? He goes to a restaurant, he eats blood, or let's say he eats chametz and Pesach, right? What happens if he eats chametz and Pesach? Nothing. He's in the restaurant, he's eating a big hoagie, nothing happened immediately. So because nothing happened immediately, he thinks, no big deal, nothing happened, right? But in reality, what's happening at that time? What's happening if we could lift up the veil from his eyes? Like strings being cut from his neshama to its main source in the shamayim. He says, he says when it comes to the point, when he goes to the point of no return, what happens? The rope will be cut completely. There's the point of no return. And by the way, you should know that sometimes when people reach the point of no return, they become extremely successful in this world. Because Hashem, what does He do? He says, there's no olam haba. I got to cash him out over here. There's no next world to him. But he did walk an old lady across the street. He did put on tefillin 12 times in his life. He did some sort of a mitzvah. Okay, so he has a small little pocket full of mitzvot. And the mitzvot, the reward is so big that you can only get him in olam haba. He doesn't have olam haba. Hashem is not going to owe him. Hashem is going to say, no. Hashem, I'm not going to owe you. Let me give you all your reward here. And all of a sudden, Hashem takes all the reward from that's supposed to be in olam haba, and He gives it to olam hazeh. And you see the guy has 22 fancy cars. Why? Because Hashem has to cash him out. One car is not enough. He's got to have 20 cars, and he's got to have 10 houses. Why? Because the reward is so great in olam haba, but he has no olam haba. So Hashem has to cash him out in this world. Because the person only needs one car, maybe two, maybe three. When you have 20, what is that? It's Hashem saying, here, let me just take all your money. You're all about the money, you're all about the physical, you're all about the worldly. Take all the money, spend it all over here, because all you want is here. Because once it's done, you have nowhere to come to. You have no home in the Shamayim. He says, he says, that's the secret of karet. He says, and that soul will be will disappear from within its nation. We know that there is a tikkun karet that a lot of people do. I know in Brooklyn it's like unbelievable. People do it during Shovavim, which is the process of reconnecting those wives. reconnecting those ropes that a person cut off. You know, at some point in their life, maybe they were young, maybe they were stupid, maybe they had no knowledge. It happens. Baruch Hashem, there's teshuvah. So there is a way to bring it back. Thank God. Thank God for teshuvah. Thank you, Hashem, for teshuvah. However, you have to remember that when you do teshuvah mir'ah, le'olam le'echol adam t'chaber chazal shosho. He says if a guy is doing the tikkun karet from a place of fear, oh my God, Hashem, I can't believe I ate I ate in Pesach. I can't believe I didn't keep Shabbat. And the guy is just so scared to get punished that doesn't connect it to the source. It's a teshuvah, but it doesn't connect. The only teshuvah that connects the wires back, the karet wires back, is teshuvah me'ava. So what is the use of doing teshuvah out of fear? It'll help you in this world. He says, teshuvah mi'irah yechola lo'il rak ba'olam hazeh. Teshuvah out of fear has some value where it's going to help you in this world. However, teshuvah me'ahava is above nature. And when a person is because it's above nature, the person too can have the ability to do things above nature. That's when a person does teshuvah me'ahava, even karet, even skila are able to be atoned for him in that level. Karet, we said, is spiritual excommunication. It's almost impossible to come back from that. Skila is a person getting stoned. That's death, physical death. He says a person does teshuvah me'ahava can come back from those as well. Look at the power of teshuvah me'ahava. Furthermore, he says any teshuvah process that is not based out of love is not going to hold for a very long time, because the day that he loses power, or he loses not the power, but rather the desire to keep going in that path, they will retreat back to their old ways, and once again he will disconnect from his source. And once that happens, that's why that person will need to first lose his money, live a life of poverty, and to have a lot of afflictions. Why? Because he went back to his old ways. But a person who doesn't do a teshuvah out of yirah, but rather from ahava, he won't feel sorry, he won't cry, he will take everything besimcha, and he will do it out of the knowledge, out of the knowing, Hashem oseh et hakol letovato. Meaning that a person that is going through hardships in this world, poverty, afflictions, hardships, when a person understands that Hashem is punishing him because he sinned, it's his sins that cause him this punishment, and he accepts it. And not only accepts it, he accepts it with joy and happiness. Because what are you going to do? That's my punishment. You can be sad about it. You can have enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, it's all for the best anyways. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu loves him. And he loves him so much that in the way that he accepts his punishment, that's how Hashem knows that Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's how Hashem knows that he loves him. Meaning, a teshuvah from ahava, we're getting a new angle on it. What's the new angle on it? The new angle on it is that teshuvah me'ahava, we think it's like this lovey-dovey process where we come to Hashem, Hashem, I love you, I love the Torah, I love the Jewish people, everything that you tell me, I love. He says, yes, okay, that's one way to do it. You're not doing it out of fear. You're coming from a place of love and connection and wanting to be united. That's one way. He says, but there's another way. If a person, his teshuvah process includes him getting punished, afflictions, poverty, and he takes it with joy, and he knows it's for the best, he says, now I know that this guy loves me. Hashem says, look at this. All the hardships that I'm giving him, and he's still happy? Why? Why would somebody be happy if he's going through hardships? Because he loves you. Because he loves me. Hashem says that's another way for a person to prove that he has doing teshuvah from ahava. Accepting the afflictions out of love shows that it's teshuvah me'ahava. Because if teshuvah and you're not doing it b'simcha and you're complaining about it, shows that you still care about yourself more than you care about God. You don't know how things are working. Things are working, that these things are working in your favor. Le tovatcha. And that's what the Ramban wrote. The Ramban wrote on Pirshot Torah, "Shemitzvat HaTeshuva hi mitzvat aseh deoraita." He says it's a positive commandment in the Torah to do a teshuvah. As the pasuk says, "Vashavta ad Hashem Elokecha v'shamata b'kolo," that you have to come back to Hashem and heed to His words. And he says one of the biggest difficulties in this world, why people are not successful at having teshuvah me'ava, because people did not learn the pnimiyut of the Torah, the inside of the Torah, the Hasidut, what we're learning right now. When you learn Hasidut, it's the internal side of the Torah. The Torah has the external side to it, like halacha, like the pshat that we learn, right? But obviously there's more layers, there's more depth to it. There's remez, drash, sod, and when it comes to sod, when it comes to things like the Zohar, we know that from there stemmed also the lineage of the Hasidut, and the Hasidut is that Torah that allows you to practice the religion and experience life with the internal side of the Torah. And when a person learns the internal, the pnimiyut of the Torah, he's able to achieve tshuva me'ava. Someone who doesn't have the learning of the pnimiyut, which is like we're learning over here, Hasidut, here we're learning the Tanya, it's going to be difficult for him. He might be able to achieve it, but not at the level when you educate yourself properly on how to, through the way of Hasidut. She Torah Hasidut v'Torah Sod. And he tells us right now, the only way you're going to achieve Teshuvah Me'ava, that is Pnimiyut Torah, the inner realm of the Torah, is when you connect Hasidut, and would learn Hasidut, and also Torah Sod, which is the Zohar. And he says, any person who doesn't learn the Pnimiyut Torah, any teshuvah process that he does will always be a lower level type of teshuvah. And his teshuvah will always be lacking. And he'll never really be able to taste the true experience of a proper teshuvah process, which is the ultimate teshuvah process with teshuvah me'ava. So what is the missing ingredient? What is the key that helps you achieve that? Hasidut and Torah Sod, which is what we're learning right now. Baal Hashem Tov, since we're talking about Hasidut, Baal Hashem Tov HaKadosh says on the pasuk, Sur Mera V'aseh Tov. We have a pasuk that gives us instruction that we have to Sur Mera, right? We have to refrain, take ourselves away from bad, and do good. Meaning, if a person is right now coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what should he do? What should he do? He's right now a sinner. Should he right away do Shabbat? Should he right away put on tefillin? Should he right away keep kashrut 100%? David HaMelech in Tehillim says, no. Before you do all that, first Sur Mera. Stop stealing. Stop lying. Stop not keeping Shabbat. First stop the bad, then do the good. Meaning the proper approach to spiritual success, first stop all the bad that you're doing. Don't do bad and good, but rather stop all the bad and then add on the good. Sur Mera v'aseh tov. כי את הרע אי אפשר לגרש לגמרי, לפי שהוא חזק מאוד, אלא תתמקד יותר ועושה טוב עד שאתה בא למדוד יהודי לפי העבירות שעשה כדי לתקן אותו. עדיף שתבדוק מהן המצוות שעשה ותשבח אותו כראוי המצוות הללו, כי ככל שתגדל כמות האור, כך תתמעט באופן יחסי כמות החושך שסובב את האדם. Now, Baal Hashem Tov tells us something completely different. We just said, no. The pshat understanding is what? Sur Mera v'aseh tov. First refrain from the bad. Focus on the bad first. Baal Hashem Tov says, no. Focus on the good. He says, no, focus on the good too. He says, why? Asok pachot be'akirat hara. Deal less with extracting the bad from your life. Don't give that so much attention. Why? Because you can't really get rid of the bad totally. You can't totally extract the bad from your life. Lefishu hazak meod. He's very, very strong, the bad, the evil in this world. Baal Hashem Tov says, focus on Aseh Tov. Why Aseh Tov? He says because when you come to measure a Jew according to his sins and how to fix him, better instead of telling him, what did you do bad? What? You don't keep Shabbat? Oh, what do you do? You don't put on tefillin? Oh, what is it that you do? You're dishonest. Well, tell me all the bad that you do. He says, no. When you want to come to help a person, you tell him other way. Tell me the mitzvot that you do. What do you do? Tell me what good you do. He says, first focus on the good things that he does. He says, and then praise him on those mitzvot and elevate him. Why would that approach be better? Why focus on the good? Why even that there's probably a lot more bad that we have to deal with versus the little bit of good that's there? He says because the more the light grows, immediately, by way of default, the darkness will dissipate. The more you increase the light in the human being, the darkness will dissipate on its own. Beautiful point from the Baal Shem Tov. And that's why the people in this world should make it a big effort to constantly increase good in the world and to take upon themselves and create a place of dira b'tachtonim l'kadosh baruch Hu. And it's unbelievable how our learning in the past few months have just been layers and layers of the same concept. You go to Tefillah, it's there. You go to Parashat Teshuvah, it's there. You go to Tanya, it's there. In the past few months, Mamash Hashem wants us to know about this concept of creating a place for God to reside in the world and within us. By doing acts of good, acts of kindness, acting good, looking for the good in people, you increase God's presence in the world, and it creates a dira b'tachtonim. It creates a place for Him to reside, as it says in Drash Tachuma, "B'shara shebarah Hakadosh Baruch Hu et haolam, nit'ava she'eh lo dira b'tachtonim, כמו שיש לו בעליונים." דהיינו, לקחת את ענייני העולם הזה הגשמיים ולהפוך אותם לאלוקות. Drash Tachuma tells us that when Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He desired, He yearned that He should have a dwelling place in the lower world, identical to the way that He has in the upper world. And what does that mean? To take all the worldly things that are physical and turn them into spiritual, turn them into elokut. And this also stems from the pasuk that we learned from the beginning of the Sefer Shemot. V'asu li migdash v'shachanti betochem. Let them create a sanctuary for me, and I will reside within them. Now, why not with them, but within them? Because the pasuk is specifically letting us know that it's not about having an edifice, it's not about having a building, that's where Hashem is going to live and it's outside of you. Rather, that as well as a dwelling place inside of you, that there should be a dwelling place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you should be a proper place for Hashem's holy presence. And create a dira b'tachtonim in you. And by doing that, you basically have to follow what Masechet Shabbat on the 133rd page on the second side says. When the Jewish people were coming out of Egypt and there was a splitting of the sea, they all pointed at the heavens and said, Ze Eli ve'anvehu. So those words, Ze Eli ve'anvehu, what do they mean? Ze Eli, this is my God. Ve'anvehu, the word ve'anvehu, the basic translation is that I'll create a dwelling place for him. Ve'anvehu, like I'll give him a castle, a mansion, a place to reside. However, there are different ways that Chazal took that word and said ve'anvehu. Abba Shaul omer ve'anvehu. He says, what's ve'anvehu? Heve domelo. Be like him. Emulate God. Mahu chanun v'rachum afata heye chanun v'rachum. Just like God is merciful, you be merciful. Just like God is charitable, you be charitable. Just like God is a provider, you be a provider. Meaning, just emulate God in every single way. Ze Eli ve'anvehu. That's my God, and I'm going to emulate Him. I'm going to be like Him. And by doing that, you'll increase the light in the world, and that will create Dorah B'Tachtonim, for him to reside. Furthermore, a person needs to also know the rule of thumb, Rachmana liba bai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the heart. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the internal, the inside of a person, and not his external. Tzarich she'alev shel adam yeh shalem Hashem. When Chazal tell us, Rachmana liba bai, Hashem wants the heart is inside of you. And Hashem wants your heart, meaning Hashem wants the inside of who you are, not the external. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we're about to wrap it up. There's going to be a lot of just reading the Pesukim, but it's almost done. Kine pshat katuv ma shekatuv. He's going to start giving us a lot of Pesukim. Because if we understand it according to the simple interpretation of what the Pasuk says, Vayipach, that Hashem blew air into the person, into Adam, הוא להראות לנו כמו שעל דרך משל, כשאדם נופח לאיזה מקום, אם יש איזה דבר חוצץ ומפסיק בינתיים, אין הבל נופח ולא מגיע קל לאותו מקום. And the Rav is giving us an example over here when it says that Hashem blew air into us. If there was something blocking it, would the air go inside? No. If there's something that is blocking, the air would never allow to go inside. It would never reach that place. It says similarly, if there is a separation, something that is coming in between the body of the person and God's, the breath or the speech of Hashem, which means what? There could be something that creates a barrier between us and God. What could that be? What could create a barrier between us and God? Gava, atzvut, when you have a lot of pride, when you are depressed, or when you steal, or anything of these things that create a barrier and separation between God and us. And those barriers, all those mistakes, all those sins, all these bad actions create the barrier, and those barriers block our tefillot from going up to the heavens. And it also creates a distance between man and God, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu constantly wants to give the person blessings. However, there has to be an opening for those blessings to come through. So since there's blockages, since there are walls, since there's a separation, when a person does teshuvah, it creates a wall. It creates a hole. And through that hole, all of God's blessings can begin to seep down. And in order for him to take down the mechitzot completely, to take away these barriers completely, he has to do and receive the full hashpa'ah, the full influence, the full abundance that Hashem has for him. He has to do the teshuvah me'ava. And once these barriers are removed, he's then going to also merit to see the light of God. As it says, Hasiru habegadim hatsu'im ma'alav. Remove from him his filthy clothes. Meaning, when a person sins, that is called begadim tsu'im, filthy clothes. When a person sins, it says if he's wearing filthy clothes. And these filthy clothes create a barrier between him and God's holy presence, the Shekhinah. But through a proper teshuvah process, the sin gets erased, the barriers get removed, and this concept of begadim tso'im, dirty clothes, no longer is a barrier between man and God. Ach be'emet, אין שום דבר גשמי ורוחני חוצץ לפניו יתברך, כי הלא את השמיים ואת הארץ אני מלא, ומלא כל ארץ כבודו, ולית אתה פנו מיניה. It says, in reality, there's nothing really physical or spiritual that's coming between us and God. You know, if you try to imagine it like that. God created the world and the heavens, and the entire world is God. And there's not a single place in this world that God is not inhabiting. In other words, don't think that there is something physical, spiritual that's blocking. This is just something that is being told to us. So in our human minds and our human intellect can make us understand that there's a blockage over here. But don't try to imagine it like if there is something really physical or spiritual that acts in that way, because Hashem is all of existence. But ki Hashem hu Elohim b'shamayim ma'al v'aretz mitachat en od, because Hashem He is the God in the high heavens and here in the lower worlds, and there's no other one but God. Ve'ihu mimele kol almin. Ve'ihu memale kol almin, and He's the one that fills up all the worlds. Ve'en acher shemale otam, and there's no other creation or anything in existence that can fill up the worlds but God. Imken, if this is the fact, what are the things that shemon'im et ha'adam el'asig hasagot elokiyot, that prevent a person to get all the spiritual abundance? What is the thing that's blocking? I want all this spiritual abundance. What is the block? He says, sometimes people struggle. How come I can't remember what I'm learning? Why do people in general just yell out to God for all the things that they need and they don't get answered? He says there's one reason why people don't get answered for the things in their life. Ela, כמו שכתוב בישעיה, he quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya, he's going to clear it up for us. Why don't we get what we want? כי אם עוונותיכם היו מבדילים ביניכם לבין אלוקיכם. Your sins separate between you and God. Your sins are the separation that causes the blockage between you and God. And when your sins go away, when you don't sin, there's no block. If you did sin, you have to clear them up with teshuvah. And if not, that is the blockage. Why don't we get answered? Why all the things that we want in our life, why can't we achieve it? Because ki ma'avonotechem hayu mavdilim benechem ben olokechem. Yeshaya in the 59th chapter, second pasuk, says it's our sins that create this barrier, this blockage between us and God. And if it wasn't for sin, man would be able to reach lofty, lofty heights in this world. Lefi shehem, because the sins, when a person sins, he's literally going against the will of God, who gives life to everything in this world. Imagine Hashem, who gives life and keeps all of existence in existence. A person goes against the Creator. So when a person goes against the Creator, it creates a barrier between the Creator. Because when a person goes benigud l'rtzono shel Hashem, he goes against the will of God, that immediately creates hefsek beno leben hachayut elokit. He creates a barrier between him and God's and the God that gives life. And anything, and you will never find God's presence or holiness in somebody who goes against the will of God. Meaning, when somebody goes in the ways of God, you'll be able to find God in God's ways and God's influence in his life easily. However, somebody that goes against the way of God, he has no connection. And this now will clarify for us the whole idea of spiritual excommunication. Karet. שנקראת ונפסק החבל המשכה משם הוויה ברוך הוא שהמשכה מהית התאה. That when a person sins on the level of karet, because we said we got several files, right? We have the file of mitzvat aseh, mitzvat lo ta'aseh, and karet. He says when it gets to the level of karet, that rope gets cut, and the spiritual abundance that would come from God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, that comes from the Hey Tata'a, the lower Hey, which is the last Hey in God's name, he no longer has a way to supply that sustenance. Why? Because there is a disconnect. With his actions, with his sins, he causes for that rope to be cut. And the neshama shebaguf ena mekabelet chayut mikora shebeshem havaya baruch hu, and the soul stops getting its spiritual sustenance, its spiritual life from its source, from God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and it brings to spiritual death. And eventually what it does, it also brings physical death, because the person has not connected to the source of life. וכמו שכתוב בפרשת אמור, ונחרתה נפש ההיא לפני מלפניי אני השם, מלפניי דייקה. He says that at that time, the pasuk says that soul will be cut away from being in front of me. What do you mean in front of me? Meaning the internal side that is the soul of the person that comes from the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, will no longer be connected to that source. In regards to all the other sins that are not on the level of karet, like al aseh velo ta'aseh, like we saw before, al kol panim hem pogim banefesh kanoda upugam u'melshon pegimat sakin. And what happens when a person transgresses on positive and negative commandments? He damages the soul, and he says that the word pegam, which comes from the word pegam, which means to damage, comes from pegimat sakin. It actually stems from the root word of damage that gets created by a knife. And why would that be? Because the damage is going to be a damage that's done like a knife. For example, sheyesh pegam kolshu b'sakin hashchita, when a person comes to shecht an animal and the knife is not kosher, habehema neset nevela, then the behema becomes a nevela, unfit to eat. Similarly, as a person's soul, when he transgresses on a sin that has karet, there's a p'ima b'nafsho, which is why he cuts his connection to God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and he's not able to draw down from the source. והוא על דרך משל מחבל אב שזור מתרי"ג חבלים דקים, כך חבל המשכה נזכר לאל כלוא מתרי"ג מצוות, וכשעובר חס ושלום על אחת מהנה נפסק חבל הדק וכולי. The example that we gave, imagine 613 ropes that constitute 613 string that all bound together create a rope, and as and that's the source that we draw down all our spiritual sustenance or abundance from up above, from the performance of the 613 mitzvot. But when he transgresses, that rope gets cut. He says, but even when a person gets to the level that he transgressed, that he has karet, and he even deserves death, there's still an impression, there's still an impression left, minafsho elokit, from God's holy soul that he embedded in him. He says, even though the guy now sinned where he needs to die, he sinned and he's in the level of karet, he's spiritual and excommunicated. However, there'll still be enough life in him to live to the age of 50 or 60. Why? Because the impression that God's holy soul that stems from the Yud Kei Vav Kei that was in his body up until this point gives him enough power to live to the age of 50 or 60, even though that he sinned karet and mitah. The rabbi here concludes on the two final points and says, from here we see that all the downfalls that come upon a person, obviously they're all directed from Shamayim, they're only for the good. And they're only so he can actually stay in this world. And he'll be able to rectify. Because every single Jew, in every single situation, wherever he is, if he wants, he's able to fix. Sharei Baruch Hashem and Yeush. There's no such thing as defeat or giving up. In other words, when a person experiences hardships, difficulties, afflictions, he should know Hashem is acting with him in a way of mercy. Why? He's really supposed to be dead, but he's giving him more life. And while he's living this entire life, and he has all these hardships, it's just so a person can do two things: accept the afflictions out of love, and that is a form of atonement, or to do a proper teshuvah me'ava, to wipe it out completely, to wipe away the karet that he has over his head. So a person needs to know that everything that's happening to him is directed from the high heavens, and it's only for his benefit. He says, but a person, don't wait for things to come down upon you from the high heavens. The minute you start to see that you're being tested for small things, right away start to do teshuvah. Don't wait for it to become bigger. See it as a sign. Meaning, if you see that nothing happened, don't think that there's nothing wrong. If you didn't keep Shabbat, if you ate chametz on Pesach, if you did something, you had the improper relations that require karet, don't think that, okay, Hashem forgot about me, he let me slide. No, it's coming. It's coming. So before it comes, do the teshuvah so it doesn't come. But if it does, and you start to see that there's a lot of hardships, Start to rectify when there's small hardships before they become major. And it concludes to say, אלא, ומה שכתוב בשם האריזה שנכנסה בו בחינת המקיף וכולי, and it says, and now the rabbi is citing what the Arizal wrote, that נכנסה בו בחינת המקיף, that entered inside of him a thing called בחינת המקיף. When a person, so this is a very deep concept, but we're just going to really go very, very fast because it's the end. It says that the Arizal says that when a person transgressed on karet, he's now categorized as hamekif. Klomar, משעבר על האיסור karet, הסתלקה ממנו חיות הפנימית. From that moment, he no longer has that inner life force. הוא מתחיל לקבל חיותו מבחינת מקיף. He has his life force from the external part of his soul. And now this just ties up everything that we started in the beginning of the class. He said the neshama has an internal side and an external side. Here the rabbi wraps it up for us at the end of Perek Hey to say, when a person transgresses on a karet, and now he's that life force, that life that he was receiving from the God's name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which was the internal life force, now is cut. Those 613 lines are cut. He has no more life force coming through him through that channel. So where is he getting his life force from? It's out from the external side of the neshama. The mekif, the external side of the neshama, that's what's keeping him alive. Because on the internal, he's dead. On the external, that's a mekif, and that's what's keeping him alive. So the Baal HaTanya continues to explain what the Arizal was saying has nothing to do with the physical part of living. Because to be physically alive, you need to have internal life force. You can't live life with just an external life force. The life force has to be internal. And the external side of the soul has to do with things that are on spiritual levels, not on physical existence. And this whole idea that he can actually live to 50 years just because the internal side of his soul has an impression of that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei neshama that was blown into him, and because it's removed, it's no longer there. That impression that's still left there allows him to physically be alive till 50 years old. He says that's only till 50. Because up until 50, that still gives him the ability to live. Or בזמן הזה כדקמן, or החיות האלוקית התנתקה משורשה, אדם יכול לקבל את החיות מהיכלות הסטרא אחרא. He says, or there is one other possibility how that person could stay alive, that he no longer gets his life force from Hashem, from the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei name, from the Pnimiyut, or even from the external, as the Arizal brought, but rather he starts to get his Chayut from the Sitra Achra. He gets it from the dark side. He starts to get his life force from the dark side. לכן, בזמן הזה, גם מי שחייב כרת ומיתה בידי שמיים, יכול לחיות יותר מ-50 ו-60 שנה. He says, that's why nowadays, even somebody who transgressed on karet, and he's supposed to be dead, they don't, mitabi de shamayim, and again, doesn't keep Shabbat, eats on Yom Kippur, eats chametz in Pesach. These people are supposed to be long gone. And he says, but because they get their life force now from the dark side, they can actually live past 50, past 60. וכלפי זמן זה מובא בשם אריזל, שחיות הקדושה שמוכר שתהיה ליהודים נמצאת בו במחינת מקיף. And he's citing the Arizal again in regards to the life force always coming from Kedusha. ויש להוסיף, and this is the final moment, שאדם שמקבל את חייתו הגשמי מאכלות הסטרא אחרא, anybody who gets his life force from the dark side, from the other side, עדיין Hashem יתברך מתנהג איתו במלאת איך אפיים. Still Hashem gives him a chance, and he's long-winded, meaning he has patience with him. ואם כן יש לו אפשרות לחזור בתשובה שלמה ולחזור לקבל את השפע מצד הנפש האלוקית. And even if he's right now transgressed on karet, supposed to have מיתה בידי שמיים, and he's getting his life force, his life sustenance from the dark side, even at this point of no return that we would say, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has midat erech hapayim, he has patience with him, and he's still able to do a teshuvah shelema, and he's able to come back and even receive shefa mitzad nefesh elokit, and receive once again his spiritual abundance from the godly source of his neshama. Baruch Hashem, that was Perek Hey. Next week we'll do Perek Vav. Again, guys, just like one final disclaimer, this class is different from the other classes that we do, because I'm literally just reading from a book, and I'm cherry picking all the nuggets that will help us understand it. But you have to understand, what we just learned right now was this. It's like a 1.5 page in Tanya. If you read it, you would never in your life be able to extract what we just learned. So the fact that we're going through the text explanation or the commentary of Rav Yoram and the additional insights of Rabbi Saad, it seems like we can grasp it. You can't grasp this if you don't have a proper teacher, a proper ground level understanding of Tanya. But yet we're walking out week after week, week after week. We get it. We understand. It's spoon-fed to us where we can actually understand chapter by chapter what's going on, and he's really simplifying it on a very practical level how to get it. We're very much blessed to have this book. We're very much blessed to have this understanding, because we have real lofty content simplified for where we can understand it. I'm walking away today saying, I understand Perek Hey. Looking forward to Perek Vav, and Be'ezrat Hashem we'll do a proper siyum probably in about a few weeks. Hashem, thank you for coming. Thank you for learning. Much appreciated.